For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
It's the third month of 2023 and India is hot and happening. What is India's current status on the global stage? And why is India so much in demand from different countries, ranging from Russia to the United States and from Australia to Argentina? Is the subject of this week's Simply Nitin. I'm Nitin Gokhale. So, the first episode of March 2023 comes to you live, mainly because there is so much happening in the world of international diplomacy, and India is the destination which is favored by many countries, in fact, most countries, in terms of how to engage with each other and how to use India's current position, the current diplomatic position, current status on the world stage is something that India is currently engaged in. Why do I say that? I say it because as we speak, the annual Raisina dialogue hosted by the Ministry of External Affairs is winding down to a conclusion after 2.5 days of intense deliberations on different subjects. The world leaders have assembled, world foreign ministers have assembled, at least of the top 20 countries in the world, under the G20 banner. And India, as all of you are aware, is the president of G20 for 2023. India's position this week or this year is unique because it is not only going to be the president of G20 grouping, but also of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And the G20 foreign ministers met just a couple of days ago. Of course, the world is now so divided that the Western bloc, led by the United States, is not agreeing to what Russia is doing in Ukraine and has therefore not agreeing to a consensus of a statement during the G20 meeting or at the conclusion of the G20 meeting. And while the Ukraine war began more than a year ago, a year after the war began in February 2022, there is no clear cut winner as yet. And that stalemate has meant that India has been forced into a diplomatic tightrope walk. And as you can see, Russians have tried to surround Ukraine from all sides. The red patches that you see here are dominated or are the areas in which the Russians have tried to outsmart and outmuscle the Ukrainians. And 1 year later, what stands out is the diplomatic tightrope walk that India has had to do and has successfully done, if you really see. While the West wanted India to condemn Russia outright for its aggression against Ukraine, the Russians told India that they are doing it only as a reaction to the NATO provocations, the NATO aggression in the Ukraine, and therefore India has now sort of taken a medium position or a mean position in between, taking the middle path by trying to broker a peace and Prime Minister Modi telling President Putin of Russia that this is no era of war some months ago. India is trying to play the honest broker between the two sides, and of course, this was an occasion when the two had met earlier in the previous summits between the two. And of course, this week, if you see the Russian foreign minister, Lavrov was in town, and so was Anthony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, and the Chinese foreign minister. So this is Lavrov meeting External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar as he arrives for the G20 foreign ministers meeting. And before him, there was, of course, the Chinese foreign minister who is in India, was in India for the G20 foreign ministers meeting. And there is Anthony Blinken, as I said, Secretary of State of the United States in this G20 foreign ministers meeting. While they met, they discussed, they sniped at each other. They also made remarks against each other. The statement that normally is issued by foreign ministers as a consensus eluded everyone, and that's where India couldn't get its heft, uh, put its heft to any use really, and therefore the G20 foreign ministers meeting ended inconclusively in that sense. That is going to be a major challenge for India. This is the Russian foreign minister Qingang meeting the Chinese foreign minister meeting the Russian foreign minister, and of course uh, this is the Chinese foreign minister who becomes only the second high-ranking Chinese official coming to India in the last 1 year or so. In August last year, uh, his predecessor Wang Yi was in India trying to broker peace, trying to lower the temperatures because of what has happened uh, in Ladakh since 2020. So, balancing diplomatic pressures and national security has been India's challenge. And if you look at uh, last 1 year, what has been India's greatest challenge? It is to balance the major power relations. It could be US India relations, where the United States wants India to outright condemn Russia, which is not something that India wants. Anthony Blinken has been meeting the Indian side in various forums, whether it's 2+2 as you see here in this video, or it's during the G20 meeting, foreign ministers meeting in Delhi, as you saw a little while ago, or India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval meeting high-ranking officials in the United States some months ago. In fact, 2 months ago, you can say this is what happened in February, exactly a month ago, more than a month ago, where the NSA was on a tour of United States and met almost everyone who matters, except of course the President of the United States, under the initiative on critical and emerging technologies, from George Miley to um, the National Security Advisor to the Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. The NSA met everyone, and of course other officials from the United States have been coming to India. So the United States is trying to woo India and wean it away from Russia for some time. But there is a realization that has dawned in DC, in Washington DC, that India's relationship with Russia is not so easy to break off, and India will not do it. Has been made clear to the Americans. So the other challenge that India has is to balance its requirements of long-term relationship, special and privileged strategic partnership with Russia, with the current scenario where Russia is now seen as a villain by the Western Bloc, but India knows that Russia has its own reasons for doing what it has done in terms of the aggression against Ukraine, and India cannot, as I said, sever its ties with Russia because of a variety of reasons. Because one, India believes that just condemning Russia for its aggression will not solve any problem. It continues to engage with Moscow, and I think one breakthrough moment came when NSA Ajit Doval met Russian President Putin one on one, a meeting that was seen as very significant since no other official below the rank of heads of state has met Putin for 20 years one on one. And therefore, this meeting is seen as an important breakthrough. Whether the NSA carried any message from the United States or the Western countries to Russia for brokering peace or to ushering peace in Ukraine is not known. But clearly, India is at the forefront, along with China, in the efforts to try and end the conflict in Europe on the Ukrainian soil, and will continue to do so. The third challenge India has, of course, it's an old challenge, but it has exacerbated itself over the past 3 years. The India-China challenge, India-China bilateral relationship. What happened in Ladakh, all of you know. China's aggression was stopped in its tracks by India. But from a peaceful coexistence that the two countries had tried for nearly 25 years since 1993, has now the potential of armed coexistence, where 50,000 armed troops are facing each other in Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh. And this is the precursor to the Galwan clash of 15 June 2020, when both sides lost soldiers. The soldiers were killed. India lost officially 20 soldiers. We don't know how many soldiers on the Chinese side were killed, but that was a turning point. That was a inflection point in the relationship between India and China. So while India says that until the border situation is normalized, it goes back to what it was pre-May 2020, other aspects of the relationship cannot be restored, or other aspects of relationships cannot be sort of taken to the next level, or cannot even be discussed. But the Chinese, after the Chinese foreign minister has returned to Beijing from the G20 meeting in Delhi, they have issued a press note which says that India should put the border issue in the right perspective and its right place, and not allow the border issue, to cast shadow over other aspects of the India-China relationship, because these are the two big countries. India, of course, is the most fastest growing large economy for the past couple of years, and China doesn't want to uh, take on a permanent enmity or adversarial relationship with India because of the various reasons of economy, because of its contest in Asia. All that is happening. The third part of all this is India's, and why does China sort of act aggressively against India, is something that we must understand. China thinks, rightly or wrongly from its perspective, that India is now clearly in the US led camp, that the Western alliance, and therefore India is being used by the United States to contain China. So the tension between the United States and China is also impinging on India-China relationship. While India has made it clear that it is not in any alliance with the United States, it is never a junior partner in any alliance. The Chinese still have the suspicion, and therefore they want to keep India off kilter, off balance, and therefore all the activities on acts that they have done on the border. That is the reason. So India's challenge is multifold. India is also, remember, a part of the Quad, which is the the quadrilateral grouping of four countries: United States, India, China, Japan, and Australia. Now, this Quad grouping, which looks at the challenge, and this is the meeting of the four Quad foreign ministers from India, China, Japan, and United States and Australia. This meeting, or this grouping, is seen by China as the US led effort to contain China's rise, to act against China as a counterbalance. This is Anthony Blinken on your screen speaking. Then there is the Australian foreign minister. This is Jaishankar, of course, speaking about what the Quad means. Now, India has made it clear a number of times that Quad, or the quadrilateral grouping, is not a military alliance. It doesn't see it as a military alliance. Rather, it sees it as an alliance of democracies, which would sort of help the large populations that these countries have in terms of supply chain management, greatest, the vaccine diplomacy, resilient supply chains, and moving away from China. So, as one of the ministers said, I think it was India's Jaishankar, who said that this grouping is not against somebody, it is for these four countries. We don't do diplomacy or foreign policy as driven by hatred, or driven by adversarial position against one country, but we do it for our own progress, our own development, our own national interest. Now, balancing this national interest versus the realities of international relations is something that India has been doing very adeptly over the past 1 year, and more, of course, earlier also. So the new strategy is that while India is part of the Quad, India will deal with China bilaterally on its own and on its own terms, and not get driven or dictated by the policies that are followed by the United States, Japan, or Australia. That I think needs to be emphasized more often, because India is the only country among the four Quad countries which has a direct land border and a land conflict, or a land border dispute with China. And whatever happens, India has to face that, like it has been doing for several years, but more so intensely since May 2020. Now, this is India's land border with China. It is the longest contested border, or a disputed border, also called the line of actual control between the two countries. And the armed coexistence that I spoke about. There's heightened deployment of troops all along Arunachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and Ladakh, of course. And therefore, India's challenge comes from that angle, that China has to be tackled on its own, while India continues to have good diplomatic relations with the other countries, which is called India's new strategy of multi-alignment. That's where India is right now making the very strong pitch for a tightrope walk in how to balance its national interest. Putting national interest above principles has been the hallmark of India's diplomacy in the past 1 year, especially after the Ukraine war started in February 2024. There is, of course, the need for absorbing new technology, getting new technology from, or emerging technology from the United States, which remains at the cutting edge of innovation and discovery and scientific initiatives, which the United States continue to lead the world. And therefore, the initiative on critical and emerging technologies, which is under the Quad rubric, India and United States have had a very detailed dialogue where, as I mentioned, the NSA had gone to US and had held meetings with not just the administration officials, but also with the industry, also with the scientific community, also with the technologists in the United States. And therefore, that has taken off right now. They're working in space together. They will work together in cyber issues, in quantum technology, in nanotechnology. All these are going to be semiconductors, would be another area in which there will be a lot of cooperation between the United States and India. So that is something India is doing with the United States, while keeping its options open with Russia, and balancing its tense relationship with China. Finally, India's current and last 3 years effort has been to also refocus on the Indo-Pacific, but more particularly on the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean region, which is India's backyard, which is India's area of responsibility, which is India's area of focus. So India's relations with countries starting from Vietnam, coming down to Indonesia, Thailand, then going to Sri Lanka, Maldives, Seychelles, Mauritius, Mozambique, and even the countries like UAE or Oman, is something that has not been noticed too much by common people. So I want to draw your attention to this fact that the Indian Ocean diplomacy that India has started, or refocusing on Indian Ocean, is something that has missed many observers, has been missed by many observers rather. And if you really look at how India is improving its relationship with France, which is a resident Indian Ocean power, with the United States, of course, it has a good relationship on the maritime front, and how India has now refocused its energies on trying to get its game right in the Indian Ocean. One challenge, finally, I want to mention that India has is to counter China's increasing inroads into the neighborhood, that is the Indian subcontinent. So China's inroads into Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Maldives is an ongoing, continuous dual battle between India and China. Sometimes India wins, some India is on the top, sometimes China wins, it is trying to come. So China will continue to challenge India's influence in the neighborhood, and that is something that India will have to deal with. It's no longer a secure backyard. But one must draw everyone's attention here that no country today, not even the United States, can say that its backyard is secure, because there are other countries, other players that come into that backyard. So if you look at what's happening to Australia, which used to be a dominant power in the Pacific island states, uh, China has increasingly challenged Australia's influence and hegemony in Pacific islands. It is challenging India's influence in the Indian subcontinent or in South Asia. And if you look at United States, which was supposed to have all the control over the Americas, is being challenged by several other countries, and maybe together by China and Russia. It is no longer has the hold over Mexico or even Canada, which is something that the United States knows. So this is the reality of the 21st century diplomacy and balance of power, and that must be taken into account when we talk about India's successes and failures. That diplomacy, international relations, is a continuous game. You win some, you lose some, but you have to continue to play it and engage with as many countries as possible, from the smallest to the largest, and that's exactly what India is doing for the past 1 year more intensely. Not that it didn't do it earlier, but it has been forced to do it more intensely because of the change global scenario. Europe is struggling for relevance as well as survival because of what has happened in Ukraine and the Russian energy having been now controlled by Russia, Russian energy going to Europe. So since all this is happening, these are challenging times, but every challenge brings opportunities, and this is India's time to grab those opportunities, is something that I firmly believe in. And therefore, the flurry of activity, the hive of India has been the hive of activity over the past couple of months, and it's going to continue to be so over this next 7 8 months, when India's presidency of G20 and the presidency of SCO will bring in more and more world leaders to India. India will be sought after by most global players, and India will have to play that role very deftly, is something that I wanted to draw your attention to. That's why this episode, which is not focused on one episode of history or one particular event that has happened in the past couple of weeks or 10 days, this time I thought I'll give you a broad overview of where India is and what are India's challenges and opportunities. I hope I've been able to make some sense and sort of give you a broad overview of this current status in India's international relations with both the neighbors as well as major powers. That's the episode. Thank you for watching. Keep watching StratNews Global. We continue to bring you interviews and interactions with different leaders, different specialists, and of course, you know where to reach us. You know where to give the feedback. Our website, stratnewsglobal.com, is also now full of articles and analyses from different specialists and authors and our own team members. So do keep watching Strat News Global YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. If you're already a subscriber, spread the word. We'll be happy to welcome more subscribers and more supporters. And of course, we welcome your feedback and suggestions. Do keep watching both Simply Nitin as well as Strat News Global. Going forward, this is what we're going to do. I think there's one question I was hoping to wind up right now, but Gaurav G has asked this question: do we run the risk that others may find us to be arrogant and ultimately we lose? Well, Gaurav, I don't think so, because India is engaging with everyone possible, and therefore there is nothing arrogant. There is no arrogance in India's approach. India's approach is pragmatic. As I said, India puts national interest above principles now, so it is more practical. We don't anymore say that so and so is a pariah, so and so is our friend. We say that everyone is important for India, and we will engage with different countries in different contexts, and continue to make sure that the conflict in Ukraine, or conflict between Russia and Ukraine, ends peacefully and quickly, so that the world can get on with its development agenda and give people who are ultimately the center of gravity for any nation more cause to cheer rather than feel um, gloomy and have a sense of doom about the future. That's where we are today. But as I said, this is a broad overview. We can do more, but we will do more when required and when the opportunity presents itself. For the time being, it's goodbye.